Rising above the buzz of ultrasonic cleaners and the clanking of stainless steel are the ideas and voices that are changing an industry. You're listening to the Beyond Clean podcast, the central nexus for the people, processes, and products that are improving our sterile processing world. Each week, we speak with frontline technicians, CEOs, engineers, and entrepreneurs with a common goal to help you fight dirty. Every instrument, every time. Whether you are tuning in for education or inspiration, we're glad you did. Now turn on those washers and turn up the volume. It's time to go beyond clean.
On this episode of Beyond Clean, we've got a special release recording from the 2025 HSPA event in Louisville, Kentucky, as our team was broadcasting from a live podcast studio in the Sterile Healthcare booth. Stay tuned for some one-of-a-kind interviews and clinical insight from many of the top names in the SPD industry. And now, on to the show.
All right, clean freaks, the time has arrived, 1 p.m. Eastern here at the Sterile Healthcare booth. My name is Hank Balch, and we are broadcasting a live podcast series today and tomorrow here in booth. And so if you can hear us, it's not too late to come on over this way and join the conversation. Kicking us off here with episode 1, we're going to be talking about sustaining sterile processing success, leaving a legacy of crowning achievements in your department. I know that's something that we all want for our own departments. And so we're going to be talking about some leaders here today that have done just that, have cast a vision and a process for sustaining the success that they've had in their departments and their teams, not only within the four walls of their departments, but across the entire industry at large. So joining us in the panel today is my former boss, actually Karen Owens, the Senior Director in Clinical Customer Education at Sterile Healthcare. Karen, welcome to the panel today.
Great to be here.
To Karen's left is Yves Theodule, Manager in Sterile Processing G at Advocate Christ Medical in Illinois. Welcome to the panel today, Yves.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Part of the magic here of Louisville, Kentucky, Karen, is this is where I started my career in sterile processing back as a brand new technician in 2009. It's also the site of one of the award-winning departments here in the country, Jewish Hospital, that we saw a tremendous success together. As we kick off the panel, I'd like to just get a little bit of background about how you ended up in Louisville as a sterile processing manager. Obviously, your background is in nursing. And then talk us through a little bit of the background to what happened there at Jewish Hospital. And then obviously we're going to be talking about that for the rest of the session today.
Well, we have a lot of stories, right? So I was an OR nurse, worked in the OR for many years, was at another hospital locally, and knew that I wanted to grow my career. And so I became the sterile processing manager at that facility. And that's really where I learned so much about sterile processing, and really it kind of got in my blood and I fell in love with it. Later, like 10 years later, I moved to become a system director of sterile processing. When I was at the former facility was when I hired Hank. He was much younger then. So was I. Hank eventually, once I moved, joined me at my new facility, as did others. And, when we arrived at that facility, there was a lot of opportunity. It was quite different than where I had came from. And so I really had to draw on all of my knowledge and experience and figure out a path forward. And really the heart of that path forward was the staff. They had been through a lot. And to say that I wasn't welcome when I first arrived on scene there would be an understatement. And so I knew that I had to get the staff on board with our vision and where we were going to go with the department. And so I don't know if this is the time to talk about that, but
so we'll get into more of the specifics here, Karen, on overcoming that initial resistance, I think would maybe be the category that every leader, coming into a new facility or even in your existing facility, trying to challenge the status quo. Every single leader out there has had that experience, and I definitely want to dig into more of that here in a moment. I want to go next here to Yves. If you've tuned into the Beyond Clean podcast before, you may be familiar with Yves' story. A couple years ago, we did a virtual conference called the Conference of Champions, where we talked to sterile processing leaders around the country that not only have built great departments, but have been recognized across the industry with different awards. And so we told a little bit of your story in that conference, Yves. But for anyone who's not familiar with you and the facility that you represent, kind of catch us up to where you were at the beginning of your journey of success. How did it all start?
Starting the journey was, it was really a challenging moment for me because I've walked into a department that was failing, a department that was struggling. And I've watched many leaders go through the department trying to fix it. And here I am as a technician. I'm teaching the leaders how to lead me. So I had to train so many leaders during the time that I was in this department. And finally, one of the leaders told me, Yves, you should be a leader. And from that point on, what she said to me rooted in my heart. It took root and I ran with it. I quit that job and went for a leadership job. And from there, I moved on up. And to my current role now at the hospital, it was challenging there also. There was several challenges that we faced and we needed to address it. And one of the stories that connects Karen and I together, Karen was hired to come and evaluate my department as a consultant. So the panic started because as a leader, whenever you have consultants visiting your department, what that means. So here she is, her and her team evaluating the department, and I'm anticipating the bad news to drop, where the hospital is gonna help exit me and bring in Karen and her team.
You're thinking like the worst case scenario, right?
Oh
You're
my
like,
God,
oh man,
yes.
this is gonna be that, right?
But this is what we always anticipate as a leader. So long story short, the report went in and it was unbelievable because she was very honest. Her and her team was very honest to say that you have the right resources here to get the job done. And I don't want to put words into your mouth, Karen, but this is how our friendship and our journey began. And from that on, we became Sterile Processing of the Year for 2018. We won that. And we also achieved the DNV certification for our department, which is, a task of its own to receive a DNV certification. And then the recognition kept coming. We turned the department around with our team and brought it to a place where people come from out of state to visit our department. Unbelievable change from when Karen walked in and she saw just a little bit of potential. And she said, it's good enough for them to address the issues.
That's a powerful story too on the journey toward excellence, right? Because as you mentioned, like Karen came in and said, there's already something very special about this department. They've got resources, they got the team, they've got the vision that we'll talk about here later on. And at the time that you visited his department, Karen, You had already had your own award-winning department. You had already seen the transition happen from very challenging beginning, the resistance that we mentioned at the beginning of the show. And so you saying that to that administration really meant something, because you know what the potential looks like at that higher level plane of the status quo sterile processing that has some challenges, but may not have the resources or the staffing or the leadership vision to go places. But you saw that in Yves' department even before the recognition started coming in. I think that's a really powerful story that I want to dig into a little bit as we go back to your department in Louisville, Kentucky, which I think it was 2016, if I remember correctly, that they won the HPN Department of the Year. In that transition, like one of the comments that Yves made is leadership for him was pivotal. And he even did not see the potential for leadership in himself that his leaders saw in him. And that personally, that is a very similar story to my story, in the Department of Jewish, because I started there as a frontline technician. No plan to go into the department leadership for myself. Like in our time together, as you were my sterile processing director at that point, you saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Now that I have you on national podcasting television here, what did you see in me, Karen, that stuck out?
I really saw innovation, I'm going to call it. You had a way of looking at a problem differently, and your perspective and out of the box thinking and solutions were also what challenged me, and you helped me become a better leader. And, you know, as a leader, we don't create change and make departments great on our own. It takes a team. And what we all did, myself, you, and many others, as you know, a lot of whom are here today, we all took those perspectives and ideas and were like, you know, let's try it. Let's do it. Right. And speaking of Yves, when I first met Yves, I saw those things in him as well. And the biggest thing when I walked into Yves' department that you need to understand is this was not an assessment of his department that he asked for. You know, this was a corporate initiative. And, you know, I think corporate's heart was in the right place. They wanted to understand the challenges they had and how do we make a plan to overcome those. But what worked well with Yves is he was open to it. You know, and not everyone is, right? But we worked together and we worked through it, and he listened to our ideas. You know, consultants often have tools that, you know, as a department manager or director that you don't have, that can really, really help you if you're open to it. So, kudos to you for being open to that. And also kudos to you for, you know, really getting energized with it. You were already going in the absolute right direction in your department. And I saw that in you, your leaders, your technicians, and things that you had already accomplished. So kudos to you for that.
And if I piggyback off of that really quick, Karen mentioned that I was open. One of the most difficult things to do is to be open for critique or a second eye stepping into your department. Ever since that experience, this is one of the things that our department and even our leaders that's in the department, we've learned to be open for a second set of eyes to come through the department. Whenever we're having DNV come through for a survey or whoever it is, we invite our infection prevention team to come to the department and survey us prior to, because they're a second set of eyes. And I prefer my IP people catching something than our D&B staff. So it's okay to be open, team, to be open, allowing, folks to come and visit your department and give you some constructive criticism.
I want to follow up on something with you, Yves. In Karen's description of her leadership team at Jewish, one of the things that you said stuck out was kind of an innovative spirit. And it's funny that you brought that up, Karen, because I would describe the openness that Yves talking about in the same exact way that you led from that director level. Because even as the supervisor, lead tech, and the manager, if you want to be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things, if you have a director or a vice president that is not open to those things, the resistance can sometimes come from the top, and not even the frontline technicians that, many times are challenged to change. And so, Yves, in your experience, obviously, like you have seen that play out at the top, to have supportive administrators who allow you the freedom to innovate. Can you give us a couple of examples, big and small, of some of those things that you have done that were maybe outside of the standard process in sterile processing when it comes to recruiting, to retention, to training, to education? Anything that you want to speak on in that topic?
That is another challenge, right? We are challenged often. The leaders of the department are challenged to find senior leadership to understand the importance of sterile processing and, how important it is to have a functional department. They do understand when something bad goes wrong, because we get called to the office. They want to discuss with us how to resolve it. But to work proactively, I think some of the mistakes that us as leaders do, sometimes we cry wolf a lot to the senior leadership. So they're tired of hearing us. They're tired of hearing all the different. So if you're very strategic about your requests, if you're very strategic about what you bring to them, and again, having a second person, a second voice to come out and repeat the same thing that I've said, it helped them to understand a lot. So, I'm super grateful that my senior leadership, they understand it really, really well. My one-up understands sterile processing really, really well. And she gives us all so we can have a great operating room, a functioning operating. So education for me is the hands down top. The more you can teach the staff, the stronger they get. They understand their job really, really well. So in my departments, we push education a lot, and we challenge folks, not just, I often say everyone know how to work a cell phone. You know how to call, but do you understand how the cell phone works? To dive deeper into how it works, the behind the scenes stuff on the washers, sterilizers, the behind the scenes stuff. We want to teach our technicians, not in the department, but starting in the classroom, to teach them high level things, deep stuff, so they can understand things like, the name of the spores that's in the biological. Help them to understand it. Then they can understand why they're doing the job that they're doing. So we push big on education in our sterile processing.
Go next to you, Karen. So one of the things that Yves brought up, critically important, right? Like the analogy he used of crying wolf. We all know there's challenges in our department, and many of those challenges we do want to surface to administrators so that they're aware. And if anything major happens, it's not the first time that they have heard that there's an issue, right? Like we want to make them aware. However, one of the things that you did has really stuck out to me for the rest of my career is, in addition to all the bad things or all the things that are challenging in departments, through things such as department newsletters, you took an active approach to communicate what good is going on in sterile processing, who's getting certified, the improvements we're making, the updates to the trays, the optimize, the cost savings. And every single month we were publishing those newsletters straight to the administrators that we also want to stay on their radar in a good way. And really cool to see that, kind of from the inside looking out. But where did that idea come from, and kind of speak to your vision behind that?
If I remember correctly, that was one of your innovative ideas, Hank. And so you also got to be the king of the newsletter.
It was Rick Schultz, if I remember.
Oh.
I think he came and did a training.
When he came to Jewish and did education for us.
He did a training, yeah.
So Hank was the king of the newsletter. He did a great job with those. But you're right. We sent those to administration, because like I said, we had a lot of challenge, a lot of opportunity, but we shared those with the department. We shared those with anyone that would listen or read. And, we had plenty to talk about. So, I think the staff was a little unsure about that at first, but then, they became proud, I think. And for the first time, their department was being highlighted for the great things they were doing. So, yeah.
And those newsletters are just one example of those kind of innovation, Yves, that we were talking about, in that out of all the departments in the hospital, I believe that we were the only department that had a department newsletter actively trying to make the case that something special is happening in our department and we want people to know about it. And that was the very beginning of the certification journey that happened there in the department. It was the beginning of all the other mission shifts that began happening. Speaking of mission, Yves, I want to go to you next on it's one thing to kind of high level say, hey, we want to change our department for the better. We want to improve. At some point, though, you have to line out a concrete direction. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? And how does everybody on the team, regardless of your title and your role, how are you going to help us in your own ways to get there? What kind of vision and mission did you cast early on in this transition for your team?
Interesting you asked that question because just a few minutes ago we were speaking to one of the leaders here, and we were discussing how as a leader we need to bring it down to reach the people that report to us. You shouldn't stand so tall where people have to look up to you. So in order to give someone a vision, you have to get their buy-ins. They have to truly understand what the vision is. So one of the things that we've done, we've educated, we've met with the entire staff, and we challenge our staff for ideas. With my department being great today, I don't credit it to myself, but the team. All of the folks that gave ideas. Because when you start drawing ideas from your staff members and they're sharing information and they see that you implemented them, it's our vision. It's our ideas. When we make changes in the department, it's not just my idea, because if it's mine, guess what? Some people may not like it. But when we sit down and start drawing information from the staff and getting their buy-in, this is when, people now are vested and they want to do better. They're going to push the goals one of the goals that we had was we called it marching to zero. March to zero quality defects. March to zero IUSS. March to zero bioburden. March to zero. When we started, I'll be transparent, our IUSS rate was 23%. That was a very, very high number. And we started to march to zero and being transparent, posting and sharing the information. Once we started sharing the information, the team felt a certain way. And to get the OR buy-in was one of the difficult things. Thank God I had a great director who would push the idea to the OR. So today, if we have an IUSS, it has to get approval through multiple layers. And the IUSS have to be done only in a critical situation. The patient has to be asleep. So whenever we have an IUSS, the whole OR is shocked to see an IUSS being done in our operating room. Our IUSS rate drops significantly. Most of the time is zero. We're a level 1 trauma center. And surgeons sometimes drop things, and sometimes they drop one-of-a-kind items. So other things that we've improved was zero trays at 7:00 in the morning. That was a big goal, and we were able to accomplish those goals just by getting the feedback from our team. They helped me. They told me how to fix it, and we just did it. That's all I did.
So, Karen, that transparency piece that Yves brought up is really, really hard if you're starting not from zero and you're starting from 23% on your IUS rate, or like we started at Jewish Hospital, thousands of instruments missing from inventory, massive instrument missing list. And yet we also made that decision to publicly say to the OR and doctors and administrators, this is how many unique instruments that are missing from our inventory every single day. But when we did that, something very powerful happened. It created buy-in, not only for our team, but also for the OR. And they start to realize, hey, it's a problem. We now all know what the extent of the problem is. And then we were able to leverage that to get concrete buy-in from the OR coordinators, from the OR liaison position. But, that's one of the stories, really powerful change in tackling that missing list. I'm wondering if you can add any commentary on, why we started as like one of the KPIs to tackle that missing instrument list and the impact you have.
Well, when we decided to tackle that problem, and it was bigger than we realized because there were so many missing instruments, they had stopped recording them in the tracking system because it's like, what's the point? And parts of the problem were kind of easy to see when you walked into the department when I first arrived. But still, I needed feedback from the staff. And one of the issues was, well, I would love to replace the instrument if I could only find a replacement. And that's because the backup instruments or whatever you wanted to call it was very, very disorganized. And so we had to strategize in collaboration with the staff and figure out how do we fix this part of the problem. And that was just organization, labeling all the instruments, having them in bins, all of that. Then we took it a step further and added those bin locations into our instrument tracking system at the instrument level. So you're looking at the count sheet, and over to the right, you could see if I'm missing this instrument, this is the bin that it's in. And so we had to make it very easy to replace those instruments. And we met our goal of having 0 missing instruments from trays. There was a bit more to it than that, but that's kind of the foundation of it. Yeah.
If it's iOS, if it's missing instruments from trays, one of the categories I put all of those in is they're actually culture killers at the same time that they're operational challenges and quality challenges. Because culturally speaking, especially for your sterile processing staff, if you're processing a tray, you're in the zone, and then you're like, oh man, I'm missing this clamp. And then you turn around to this disaster of a backup area and you're like, this is going to kill my groove. It's going to slow me down. I'm going to spend all this time and I may not even be able to find it. If I do, maybe I find something that's actually not even the right one and I put it in and then I still get yelled at by someone because it's the wrong substitution. And it really it attacks the clinical conscience of your technician beyond just it also slows us down. It's also frustrating. It undermines that cultural vision. Now, Karen, before we move on past the mission piece, though, I know one of the pivotal priorities that you took in casting the vision of change in the Jewish hospital department was really identifying and crystallizing what the mission had to do with our technicians on the front line. Can you walk us through how you approached that and the implications again across just the daily life in sterile processing that a really concrete mission statement had?
So, I mentioned earlier that I knew that I had to get the staff on board. But how do we do that in a way where we can cast that mission and vision and really give it life? And how we did that was with the staff. They were the key. So we took the hospital's values that they had at the time, and we talked to the staff about them. And, every hospital has them, right? But we talked to them and they said, well, what does that have to do with us? And we recognized right away this is a problem. They don't connect to the mission, vision, and values of this organization. So we took those and we revamped them for sterile processing. We created our own mission statement. We reworded the values of the organization to make sense and connect with sterile processing. And then we created a very lofty vision. And so we did all of that. And I have the document. If anyone wants, I can share it with you afterwards if you want to hang around. But we didn't stop there. We took that mission, vision, and values and we gave it life. We incorporated it into everything that we did in our department, all the way from interviewing candidates to our job descriptions, our competencies, our corrective action, our communication. Everything that we did in our department connected back to our mission, vision, and values. And it was so impactful. And I think it still lives and breathes today. And people that are there, that were there then, still talk about it. And it's important to them, and it's become a part of the culture. So even though myself as a leader, Hank as a leader there, we're long gone, but it still has life. And that's what we want to do because people move on. We want it to have life, and we want that to continue even after we're gone.
Yes. So some concrete examples, of what Kara's describing, that we integrated this mission and the values into everything we did. So at the beginning of the shift totals, when we would give shout outs for a job well done, we wouldn't just say, "Hey, Johnny, great work on that good catch for Trey." Would say, "Hey, Johnny, you just demonstrated one of our values in the department. You had quality. We're going to give you a quality shout out that's coming from our values because you made that good catch." Or "Hey, Julia, great job on that customer service. That's actually one of our values." We integrated it on every recognition. We integrated it on every corrective action, like you said, like when we had to have those hard conversations in the office and said, "Hey, Judy, we know you're trying hard, but one of the errors and mistakes we had, like the reason we have to have this conversation is because I was inattentive to details, right? And so we've got a value that overlays that we want to call out here. It's not about you. It's about the bigger mission that we've cast in the department." And we did that again and again and again. And yes, it became real to the point that every technician knew and had memorized what those value statements were in the facility, and extremely powerful.
I'd like to give an example just for impact. So, for example, teamwork was one of the values. And so our definition was in sterile processing, we will willingly subordinate our own personal agendas in order to accomplish together what we cannot on our own, knowing we are motivated by a common purpose. We will trust our teammates to perform their job at the highest level. We will earn that trust daily by doing everything we can to serve the patient to the best of our abilities.
Powerful stuff. Yeah. So if you hadn't got a chance to see this, we do have a few copies after the presentation. Come check it out. So Yves, let's talk about, future leaders. Well, current and future leaders. Obviously, that's a powerful part of both of our stories. Is we started, like everyone starts, at the entry level, technician level. And at some point in our career, someone saw something in us that we didn't see in ourselves. And when we get to become leaders, we get to see that in others. So as you're identifying future leaders, what sticks out? What kind of behaviors, what kind of priorities do you see in technicians that set it off and say, this one has something special. This is real potential here?
That's a great question. First, in order for me to be able to evaluate the technicians, the supervisors, or whoever that future leader may be, you have to be on the floor. You have to be able to rub shoulders, or you're going to make the mistake of promoting someone that speak a good game, but they're not really a high performer. It is critical that you listen closely to what the person is telling. In order to identify a great future leader, you have to listen and you have to watch. You have to have conversation. You have to ask the right type of questions. Why are you looking to become a leader? Number one, hands down, all of my leaders have to have integrity. Integrity is the key for a sterile processing person in general. I don't care what position you have. If you don't have integrity, you will harm our patients. I was very, very proud of my team. When an incident took place in the department, and it was them that raised their hand to say, we've made a mistake. We did something wrong. And now we have to tell the OR that we did this. The OR didn't catch it, but we caught it. Where someone without integrity would have just swept that under the rug and just kept going. But when you have integrity, you will raise your hands even if it will cost you a job. even if you feel that your job is threatened. And I think that's one of the key things that I look for. And I look for someone that's hungry, somebody that wants to learn. I have a lot of information that I would love to share. I would love to educate. Do you really want it? If you really want it, we will give it to you. And that person also have to have a quality. And by the way, I don't make leaders. Leaders are already born. We just learn how to identify them. The people that are leaders, they were already a leader in whatever they were doing prior to sterile processing. We just need to learn how to identify them, and then we groom them and teach them how to be a sterile processing leader. So it's important to be able to see that. And Karen, you mentioned something, servant leader. It's amazing. I love a servant leader. In order for you to be a great leader, you must learn how to serve first. I'm terrified of the leaders that's never been in a role of a sterile process. They've never done the job. Even if they started as a leader and never been a tech, go back to square one and learn how to wash some instruments. Because how are you going to communicate with your staff? So I look for people with a heart that cares about our patient. I look for people with integrity. I look for people who are hungry to do or to grow.
So, Karen, in our department here in Louisville, one of the special things about doing this interview at this conference is that was where the vision for Triple Crown certification was born. Obviously, this is where the Kentucky Derby is. And back in 2014, 2015, we had conversations on how can we drive a true certification mindset across the entire department to inspire growth beyond the status quo, right? At that time, the department, like many other departments around the country, required the baseline CRCST certification, but that was it. And then you had a vision to say, let's do more. And that more was not 2 certifications. It was let's max out. At that time, there was only 3 available certifications in the industry. And so we said, the big vision, we're going to become the biggest triple certified department in the country. And no matter what your role, what your title, we're all going for 3. And that's where that vision was born that has now spread across the entire globe. Like Triple Crown is a thing. It's grown into what's called the Golden Crown now for with the 4 certifications. But that idea was born in the department right down the street here, Jewish Hospital. And, something very surprising happened, kind of going back to what Yves has said, is we cast that vision expecting our high performers to go get them. Go get all 3 certifications. Those are the ones that we're like, yeah, they're going to lead the race. But actually, that's not what happened. Can you tell a little bit of that story?
I can. And I think in speaking of the vision for the Triple Crown, it all started with just one. Early on in my time at Jewish, one of the things that I did was mandate certification. And that at the time was just the CRCST. And what happened after that staff meeting when I delivered that news was we had one very long-term employee, Miss Odessa, who worked there. She'd been there, I think, 40 years. She's been there 50 years now. And she came into my office and she cried. And she said, Miss Karen, you might as well just fire me now. I'm old. I'll never be able to pass this test. And I just don't think I could do it. And so I learned something that day. And that was that I had to commit to each and every one of these people that I just mandated certification, that we were going to support them through it, and we were going to get them there. And so, no, it wasn't our high performers that, went out there and did it first. It was the people like Miss Odessa. So the second time that Miss Odessa came to my office and cried was when she passed that test the first time. I've never seen someone so proud of themselves, and that was a gift to me. And so we're like, why stop here? Let's do them all. And so Miss Odessa got them all, as did many other people. So
that was a very emotional time in my own young sterile processing leadership career. Because, I had an expectation that, my higher performers, they're going to run with this. Those are going to be the ones that get it. And then I realized in that moment that any of our longer term employees who had never had the expectation to be certified, they never had any mission or vision to work to, once they had it cast out for them and they realized that you're going to support them and walk through them, it was like night and day. They drove for it. They hungered for it. I think that's the word that you use, Eve. They ran after it faster than anyone else in the team because now finally, for the first time in 40 years sometimes, they had a leader that said, we can do this. We can go beyond anything you've ever gone individually, but also as a department. Really, really powerful. And now, for the rest of my sterile processing career, I never counted anybody out. No matter how big of a problem child or how unlikely it seemed they're going to get with the program, I have seen those transformations happen. But it's got to start, like you said, it has to start with believing yourself as a leader in this mission that you're committing to and believing in your people, even if they don't believe themselves at the very beginning. It's really powerful. So as we kind of move toward a wrap here, Eve, let me talk about the sustaining part of this legacy. Obviously, you have both built fantastic departments. And getting to the mountaintop, I think we would all agree there is no mountaintop that you just stop at. You keep going. You get that success, you get that momentum, but there's always higher to climb. And yet you also don't want to go backwards, especially if transitions occur on your team. So maybe like you go to another facility, or maybe some of your key leaders, your managers, your quality assurance coordinators, your lead techs, maybe they go on. How have you kept and sustained the momentum and the excellent vision and mission that you've built at your facility? What have you seen to be most successful?
So sustaining is really interesting because as leaders move on, vision changes. And it's important if you're that leader that's in the department and it's your vision, you have to hardwire some things. You have to hardwire auditing. You have to hardwire surveying, the department. You have hardwired all these different things that's going to keep it going. Once it's hardwired, the staff would not, drift away from it. So it's really important that whatever your goal is, make sure that it's hardwired, because once we move on, it's easy to go backward.
And when you say hardwired, do you mean like in your documentation, like are you changing your job descriptions or updating your standard operating procedures so that it's like your constitution of your department is now updated to continue on?
Yes, exactly that. Creating documents that when you're auditing, the staff won't get away from it. And also, not only that, but we always report up to senior leadership. So they hold us accountable. We report into the infection prevention meeting. So they hold us accountable. So many people are holding you accountable where it's hard for you to start going backward. Too many people involved. And also as a leader of the department, it's important once you reach the top of the mountain, you don't stop there. Create some new adventures to go to. So once we reach on top of the very high mountain, we find another mountain to climb. It's really important to keep the staff engaged and drive them to be the best technician, the best leaders, the best department ever. And while we're being the best and holding everyone accountable, the person that's benefiting from all of this, it's not us, but our patients. You know, we help patients, every day, and they don't know who we are. Our patients benefit from that. You can go home and sleep well at night because our patients are safe because of the things that you've hardwired in your department.
So, Karen, one of the stories that's really powerful that's coming out of the Jewish hospital story is a lot of the leaders that started their career in that department as technicians have gone on and do terrific things, both at the leadership level and other departments around the city, the state. They're down in Texas, in Florida. They're scattered to the four winds. They've gone on to lead education departments at other manufacturers and companies in the space. They've gone on to launch podcasts and stuff. Crazy stuff has happened, but not just one, not just two. I mean, I'm talking about a large family tree born out of this mission, vision, value that happened there in Kentucky. Why do you think that was? What was so powerful about what has created there that continued beyond the four walls and all these different lives and careers?
I think we didn't give ourselves boundaries. And we believed in each other. We supported each other. Just like Miss Odessa, would I have dreamed that she would want to do all the certifications? No. But once we supported her and she proved to herself that she could do it, there's no boundaries. Just keep doing it. And so I think that was another part of our culture is, hey, how high can we go? And one of my mentors, who's here in the booth, his name's John Kimsey, but one of his famous sayings is, it's not our job to process instruments. It's our job to continuously improve how we process instruments. But it reminds me of another challenge we threw down in a staff meeting one day. I think it was in April or May, and we just gotten the new Healthcare Purchasing News magazine, and we held it up in the staff meeting, and we said, we're going to be on the cover of this magazine. We didn't have any boundaries.
Karen, I think one of the things, again, kind of from the outside looking into that story that was also very powerful is the way that we visualize growth for our team was not just internal, like on the boundary piece, right? We were not like, you can grow and we'll support you in this small career ladder that happens to be in our department. We said, we want you to grow as quick as you can possibly grow, go as far as you can possibly go anywhere. And in fact, and I remember one time we took them up at one of the top floors, one of the towers, and we looked out over the city and all these different hospitals. And I said, I want you guys and gals to be leading every single one of these hospitals that we see out there. That was coming out of the vision that you cast for no boundaries. We want growth regardless of what it means for our team, because we know that if you grow, there's going to be a pipeline of people behind you who have seen you grow and want to come here for that reason, because they know they're going to find leaders in a department that invests in everyone from Miss Odessa all the way down the line, regardless of where you're starting from. They're going to buy into you. And I have seen that play out time and time again, career and career again.
We even have someone that started with me as a technician who was the CEO of a brand new hospital in South Carolina. So no boundaries. Whatever your vision, what you want to do, you can achieve it.
Well, Karen and Yves, terrific conversation today. There's a lot more to say on this topic. For anybody who's here live, we're going to take Q&A here once we wrap up the recording, but I want to thank you both for a terrific conversation. And, thank you again from the bottom of my heart for the impact that you've made, not only personally to me, but to all of the other leaders and future leaders scattered across the industry that are hungry for growth and they're looking for someone to believe in them. And you guys are great examples of what that looks like at the leadership level. So great job today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Beyond Clean. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to Beyond Clean on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for Beyond Clean in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@beyondclean.net. We look forward to hearing from you.